Urgent, no one expected it. Curry makes a strong statement about LeBron James' retirement. Stay until the end to find out everything. But before starting the video, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any news about the Lakers. For years, Stephen Curry's world had a rhythm to it. A rhythm built not only on three-point arcs and relentless practice but also on the constant presence of a towering figure in the league, LeBron James. His name was stitched into the very fabric of the NBA, an unavoidable force, an era-defining presence. And now, as whispers of LeBron's retirement begin to move through locker rooms and media circles, Curry finds himself facing a strange silence. It's the kind that creeps in when a storm passes, not with chaos but with the undeniable sense that something massive has just shifted. Steph isn't the type to dwell on uncertainty. He's methodical, grounded, and focused on the next play. But the possibility of LeBron stepping away? That hits different. It's not just about losing a competitor. It's the potential end of a generational mirror, someone who in so many ways helped shape Steph's career. Not by mentoring him or training alongside him but simply by being there. Year after year. Always in contention. Always part of the picture. When Steph first entered the league, LeBron was already a global phenomenon. He'd already been on magazine covers, carried teams to the finals, and shouldered the weight of impossible expectations. Steph, on the other hand, was still proving that a 6 feet 2 inches guard with a skinny frame and a sweet jumper could truly shift the game. But over time, their stories began to intertwine. First through contrast, then through competition, and eventually through mutual acknowledgement. Looking back, Steph realizes how much of his identity as a player was sharpened by LeBron's presence. Whether it was on Christmas Day showdowns, finals battles, or All-Star weekends, there was always a gravitational pull toward LeBron. He was the benchmark, Steph has admitted. If you wanted to call yourself great, you had to go through him. There's a weight that comes with competing against someone so dominant for so long. Every matchup carried intensity. Every possession mattered. It wasn't personal, it was legacy. And now, with the finish line in sight for LeBron, Curry is coming to terms with a new reality. The game as he's always known it is changing. It's not just that LeBron may retire. It's that, for the first time in over 2 decades, the league might not have him. No number 6 on the floor making the impossible look routine. No late-game takeover that defies age. No magnetic presence drawing every camera lens and headline. Steph feels the absence before it's even real. And it stirs something in him, a mix of sadness, respect, and deep gratitude. They were never on the same team. They weren't from the same city or background or playing style. But they were bound by something more profound, legacy building. And when one of those architects begins to lay down his tools, the other must reflect on what was built and what's next. Curry understands the gravity of this shift. He's no longer the young shooter looking to prove himself. He's a 4-time champion. A 2-time MVP. A household name. And yet, there's a boyish reverence in him when he talks about LeBron, the same kind you'd find in a player 10 years his junior. Because Steph knows that he didn't just play with LeBron. He played during LeBron. And that distinction makes all the difference. As the days tick by and retirement rumors grow louder, Steph isn't rushing to eulogize LeBron's career. He knows better. If anyone can come back for one more season and dominate, it's James. But the writing is on the wall even if faint. And for Steph, that means more than preparing for the next game. It means preparing for a league that won't ever look quite the same. There's a strange beauty in that. In endings. In farewells. It's the kind of moment that makes you appreciate the grind even more. Curry knows his own journey will one day approach its final act. But for now, he's focused on honoring the journey of someone whose greatness demanded he rise higher, fight harder, and believe deeper. And as he laces up his sneakers and jogs back onto the court, without knowing if it will be the last season he ever shares with LeBron James, Stephen Curry does so with full awareness. He is part of something historic. Something fleeting. Something unforgettable. The storm hasn't fully passed. But the air has changed. And Steph can feel it. Stephen Curry never sought validation from anyone when he first entered the league. He just wanted to play the game he loved in the way only he could, fluid, fast, with a rhythm that felt more like music than sport. Yet even as he carved out his identity in the early days, one presence loomed large in every arena, in every post-game conversation: LeBron James. In those initial years, LeBron seemed almost mythic. Bigger than life, stronger than logic, a walking standard against which all rising players were measured. Steph was still getting used to the NBA's speed, the pressure of carrying a franchise, and the whispers that his size and style wouldn't last. But he knew even then that if he wanted to make a name for himself, it had to come in a league where LeBron reigned supreme. Respect doesn't always come quickly in professional sports. It's rarely handed out, it's earned, often through fire. And in Curry's case, it came through performance, showing up in the biggest moments, growing year after year, becoming a threat no one could ignore. LeBron took notice slowly but surely. Not with loud praise at first, but with the kind of subtle acknowledgement that players give when they recognize something real in each other. Steph remembers one of the early moments that stuck with him. A regular season game. Warriors versus Heat. LeBron's squad was stacked. Steph wasn't yet an MVP, but his confidence was growing. He made a shot, deep, ridiculous, almost careless, and LeBron just smiled. Not mockingly, but knowingly. As if to say, okay, I see you now. From there, things evolved. Not overnight, but over seasons. The respect grew through fierce competition. Finals battles that pushed both men to their limits. Moments of triumph. Moments of heartbreak. They weren't friends texting daily. But they were linked, undeniably, through the shared experience of carrying greatness. For Steph, watching LeBron command the floor, dictate tempo, and shoulder pressure was like studying a masterclass in poise. He never wanted to mimic it, his game was too different, but he admired it deeply. The way LeBron navigated noise, expectations, and scrutiny with unwavering control gave Steph something to measure himself against. Something to rise to. What makes their mutual respect so powerful is that it comes without pretense. They didn't need public declarations or viral gestures. It was in the way LeBron would tap Curry on the chest after a tough game. In the nods exchanged across the court during warm-ups. In the quiet recognition that they were building something that would outlast box scores and media chatter. Even in moments of conflict, hard fouls, intense matchups, verbal back and forths, there was always that undertone of admiration. Because both players understood how rare this was. How rare they were. Two men redefining the game in different directions, colliding in the biggest moments, yet holding on to the dignity of sport. Curry believes respect like that doesn't fade. Even if LeBron retires tomorrow, the imprint he left won't disappear. And that respect, the pure, competitive kind, is something Steph treasures. Not because it validates him, but because it represents a shared journey. A road few can walk, fewer still can understand. Now, as the league prepares itself for a future without LeBron on the court, Steph finds himself looking back at those years not just with nostalgia, but with pride. They didn't always agree. They didn't always smile. But they always brought the best out of each other. That's a bond no box score can capture. And if LeBron does call it a career, Steph knows his next meeting with him won't be across the hardwood. It might be in a studio, a business event, or even just a quiet dinner. But when that happens, Curry won't be thinking about missed threes or championship rings. He'll be thinking we built something together. And we both knew it. Every great player needs a rival, not an enemy but a worthy adversary. Someone who forces them to evolve, to dig deeper, to redefine what's possible. For Stephen Curry, that rival has always been LeBron James. Their rivalry didn't happen overnight. It wasn't manufactured by media or fueled by off-court tension. It was born in the heat of competition, nurtured by the weight of expectations, and sealed under the brightest lights the NBA has to offer, the finals. From 2015 to 2018, four consecutive championship series told the story of a duel that came to define a generation. It wasn't just Warriors versus Cavaliers. It was Steph versus LeBron. Two completely different archetypes of greatness. LeBron, the all-powerful commander, blending force and finesse. Steph, the silent assassin, changing the geometry of basketball with every shot launched from the logo. Those finals were more than games. They were a battleground for legacy. And in each matchup, no matter who won, something was carved deeper into both of their careers. Steph remembers the nerves before their first finals clash. The pressure was immense. He'd never been on that stage before. LeBron, by contrast, looked like he had been born under those lights. He moved with a confidence that said, "I've been here. I know what this takes." And yet, Curry's team won. It shocked some, delighted others, but most importantly, it changed everything. Suddenly, the unstoppable force had met a new kind of challenge. Not one built on physical dominance, but one that required chasing shooters 35 feet from the basket and trying to solve a puzzle that kept moving. Over the next 3 years, the story grew more intense. New rosters, new stakes, but the same two figures at the center. Steph and LeBron. Trading blows. Shifting momentum. Creating moments that are now etched into league history, from block-and-three sequences to record-breaking shooting nights. Curry never saw those moments as just personal. He understood the magnitude. "This wasn't about me versus him," he said. "It was about what our battles meant to the game. To fans. To history." Still, deep down, he also knew something more subtle was happening. Each time they faced off, they pushed each other to reach deeper levels of greatness. LeBron became more surgical, more driven, carrying teams with supernatural endurance. Steph became more fearless, more mature, a leader who understood that joy and fire could exist together. The rivalry expanded beyond the finals. Even regular season matchups took on extra weight. The NBA would circle the calendar dates. Fans would tune in, knowing something special might happen. And no matter the outcome, the handshake after the buzzer always carried the same energy. Mutual respect, mutual elevation. In many ways, that rivalry reshaped the league. Teams were built with the sole purpose of beating either the Warriors or the Cavaliers. Super teams were formed, philosophies changed, and game plans adjusted. All because two men stood at opposite ends of a championship chessboard. For Steph, those years taught him more than any practice or film session ever could. They taught him composure. They taught him how to lose and, more importantly, how to come back. They taught him how to be great in the presence of greatness. Now, as retirement whispers surround LeBron, Curry feels the weight of that rivalry, not as a burden but as a gift. Few players get to experience something so consistent, so intense, so defining. And even fewer get to look back at it knowing they didn't just survive it, they helped write the story. "There were times I hated how good he was," Steph admits with a laugh. "And times I was in awe. That's how you know it was real." As the league slowly transitions to a new era, Curry knows the epic battles between him and LeBron will be replayed for decades. Young players will study those games not just for the highlights, but for the lessons in grit, composure, and heart. Rivalries don't last forever, but their echoes do. And Stephen Curry, standing now on the other side of those legendary matchups, understands he's part of something timeless. Not just a competition, a legacy shared. For all the iconic moments on the hardwood, the buzzer beaters, the chase-down blocks, the impossible three-pointers, Stephen Curry has found that some of the most lasting lessons from LeBron James had nothing to do with basketball itself. To many, LeBron is a force of nature on the court. But to Curry, he's also become a blueprint of how to live with purpose off of it. Watching LeBron over the years hasn't just meant studying how to break down a defense. It's been a masterclass in how to use fame, influence, and vision for something greater than the game. Steph is no stranger to leadership. He's led teams to titles, carried himself with grace through criticism, and become a global icon. But even so, there are moments where he has stopped and said, "LeBron is doing something we all need to pay attention to." Whether it was opening a school, speaking up during moments of national tension, or investing in his community, LeBron turned attention into action, and Steph took note. "He didn't wait until retirement to make an impact," Curry once observed. "He did it while still being the face of the league." In a world where so many athletes are told to stick to sports, LeBron never accepted that boundary. He redefined what it meant to be an athlete, and Curry, while different in personality and style, saw that boldness and felt inspired by it. It wasn't about being louder or more political. It was about being intentional. Using your influence to open doors for others, to shift narratives, to create lasting change. That kind of leadership resonates deeply with Curry. As a father, he watched how LeBron made his children visible, present, grounded, and loved, even amid the chaos of fame. As a husband, Steph admired how LeBron protected his personal life while staying firmly in the spotlight. And as a black man in America, he respected how LeBron never shied away from standing for something, even when it came with risk. They're different men, to be sure. Different backgrounds, different upbringings, different tones. But the mission? That's shared. Elevate the game. Elevate your people. Elevate the world around you. Now, as talk of LeBron's retirement grows louder, Curry feels a quiet urgency. Not fear, but a recognition that a torch is being passed. Not just in basketball talent, but in responsibility. In influence. LeBron has set a high standard for what it means to lead off the court. And while Steph has already started carving his own lane, he knows the void LeBron will leave goes far beyond the Lakers' starting lineup. There's a sense of respect there that words can't fully capture. Because what LeBron has done, building businesses, producing films, launching foundations, shifting culture, doesn't just affect fans or headlines. It affects players. It affects the future of the league. It affects how athletes see themselves. Steph often thinks about legacy, especially now, with his own career closer to its twilight than its beginning. And in LeBron's example, he sees a challenge, not to copy but to continue. To ask himself, what will I leave behind when I'm done playing? That question in many ways has already started shaping his next steps, from youth initiatives to media ventures to pushing for change in the college sports system. Steph is walking a similar path, but he knows who helped light it. As he reflects on all this, on what LeBron stood for beyond basketball, he's filled with a deep gratitude. Because while they were rivals, they were also, in a broader sense, allies in changing the narrative of what an athlete could be. If LeBron's final game comes soon, Curry won't just clap for a basketball legend. He'll salute a giant who helped redefine greatness. A man who taught him, and so many others, that the real championship is how you carry yourself when the cameras are off. Because in the end, stats fade. Records fall. But purpose? That echoes forever. In the early stages of his NBA career, Stephen Curry knew where he stood in the league's pecking order. Not at the top, not yet. He wasn't the most physically imposing. He didn't have the explosive vertical leap or the chiseled frame. What he had was vision, touch, rhythm, and something harder to quantify, patience. And standing tall above much of the league's landscape was LeBron James. A colossus of expectation, consistency, and dominance. For years, Steph wasn't even mentioned in the same breath. That wasn't disrespect. It was just the truth of the hierarchy. LeBron was the measuring stick. And for a long time, Curry operated in the wide reach of that shadow. But shadows, Steph learned, aren't always bad. They provide shelter while you grow. They shield you from lights you might not be ready to stand under. And they offer a front row seat to greatness, if you know how to learn from it. As the seasons unfolded, Curry did just that. He observed how LeBron carried his team through rough patches. How he handled media storms with calculated calm. How he stayed disciplined, not just in his play but in his lifestyle. It wasn't envy Steph felt. It was admiration mixed with determination. He didn't want to be LeBron. He wanted to be worthy of playing against him. That mindset shaped his grind. Not loudly. Not with declarations or social media posts. But in silence. In thousands of quiet hours in the gym. In film sessions. In every rep that no one saw. And then something changed. Steph didn't just chase LeBron, he started catching up. MVP seasons. A championship. Then another. Then an unprecedented 73-9 regular season. Steph went from being the guy with the pretty shot to the face of a revolution. The league, once dominated by power and above-the-rim athletics, began tilting toward spacing, skill, and shooting, toward his style of play. It was no longer about being in LeBron's shadow. It was about sharing the stage. But even then, Steph never saw it as surpassing LeBron. He saw it as growing beside him. Two different forces shaping the league in their own ways. One a locomotive, one a laser. Both necessary. Both generational. With every playoff run, every head-to-head matchup, Curry matured, not just as a player but as a person. He began to understand the weight that LeBron had carried for so long. The pressure to win. The eyes always watching. The voices always judging. and he respected it more with each passing year. Now, with the talk of LeBron's retirement gaining volume, Steph reflects not with pride or triumph, but with humility. Because he knows that without LeBron, without the standard he set, Steph's own growth might have looked very different. He was always there, Curry thinks to himself, not just as a competitor, but as a reason to keep pushing. That's the unspoken bond between elite athletes. They don't just measure themselves against the game. They measure themselves against each other. They compete, yes, but they also carry each other upward, even when it's through tension and rivalry. Steph doesn't shy away from admitting that he used LeBron's presence as motivation. Every accolade LeBron collected made Steph more focused. Every game where LeBron dominated made Steph hungrier. It wasn't obsession. It was fuel. Now, as he looks back, Steph is struck by how natural the transition felt. From chasing a ghost to sharing a legacy. And maybe, just maybe, one day being the giant that future stars chase too. LeBron's shadow never blocked Steph's light, it challenged him to shine brighter. And in that space, Stephen Curry didn't just grow. He became unforgettable. Basketball has always been about more than numbers. The wins, the stats, the rings, they matter. But the real measure of impact? That's seen in how the game feels different when you're part of it. And few players have changed the feel of basketball the way LeBron James and Stephen Curry have. Steph knows this. He feels it every time a kid steps on a court and launches a deep three with confidence. He sees it in the shoes players wear, the way teams space the floor, how arenas buzz with anticipation when he crosses half court. And just as he's aware of his own role in that shift, he's never lost sight of the man who helped redefine the tone of the modern NBA, LeBron. When LeBron entered the league, he brought something basketball hadn't fully seen before. A combination of prodigy-level expectations and grown-man readiness. He wasn't just talented. He was prepared. He spoke like a veteran. He moved like a star before becoming one. And Steph, coming from a quieter college program with far less fanfare, watched in awe. What LeBron brought to the NBA was belief. That athletes could control their narrative, shape their brand, and be more than just a part of a system. He made the player the story. And that mindset inspired Curry, even if their approaches were completely different. Steph was never interested in being loud. His game spoke first. But over time, as he saw what LeBron was doing, how he used every platform, every moment, he began to understand the responsibility of influence. It wasn't enough to play well. You had to represent something larger. You had to push the culture forward. And together, in very different ways, they did just that. Curry transformed how basketball is played. LeBron transformed how basketball is viewed. Steph made spacing and movement fundamental. LeBron made player empowerment part of the league's DNA. One bent the court, the other bent the league's structure. Both redefined what power in the NBA could look like. Steph sometimes laughs when people argue about who ruined the league more, him or LeBron. It's always said half-jokingly, but there's truth in the tension. They forced teams, coaches, and players to adapt or get left behind. Not because they were trying to disrupt, but because they were too good to be ignored. From LeBron's decision to move to Miami and form a super team, to Steph's Warriors stretching the court to its limits, the NBA of today looks drastically different than it did just a decade ago. And that's no accident. That's impact. Curry never set out to be a cultural icon. But as he began to see what was possible, as LeBron opened doors and refused to be confined, Steph realized he had a role to play too. In fashion, in business, in activism, in setting an example. Their influence has also helped redefine what it means to be a leader. LeBron leads with volume, charisma, and public declarations. Steph leads with composure, consistency, and quiet conviction. But both lead effectively. Both have shaped how young players imagine themselves. And both have shown that there's more than one path to greatness. Now, with LeBron's final seasons approaching, and the league beginning to whisper about what comes next, Curry feels a strange kind of pride. Not just in his own accomplishments but in the era he helped build alongside LeBron. A time where individuality and team success weren't enemies. Where creativity was embraced, not feared. Where legacy wasn't just about stats but significance. If LeBron walks away soon, Steph knows the game will miss more than just highlight dunks and stat-stuffing nights. It will miss a visionary. Someone who helped athletes see themselves differently, as owners, creators, voices. And as Curry continues his own journey, he holds on to that part of LeBron's legacy. Not to imitate it, but to carry it forward in his own way. Because culture isn't static. It grows. And it's grown because of men like LeBron, and yes, Steph too, who weren't afraid to change the game they loved. At the highest level of competition, it's easy to assume that rivalries are fueled by animosity. Two stars, each determined to prove their dominance, locked in a constant battle for supremacy. But what the public often overlooks is the quiet, steady respect that grows beneath those fiery matchups. For Stephen Curry and LeBron James, what started as rivalry has matured into something deeper. A bond forged through competition but sealed by understanding. Curry doesn't pretend he and LeBron are best friends. They don't talk every day. Their personalities are different, their circles distinct. But over time, through years of battles, shared pressure, and mutual triumphs, something unspoken took root between them. A kind of kinship that only those who've walked the same path can truly understand. Only a few people in the world know what it's like to live this life, Steph has often said. And LeBron's one of them. That life, being the face of a franchise, a family man under a microscope, a target on every court, is isolating. Even with teammates, coaches, and support systems, there's a loneliness in being the one. And when Steph looked across the court and saw LeBron, he saw someone who carried that weight with unmatched consistency. He saw it in the way LeBron prepared his body, how he engaged with fans, how he protected his teammates. He recognized the strain hidden behind the smiles. And in that recognition, a new kind of connection formed, not spoken aloud but deeply felt. Curry recalls small moments that shaped this quiet brotherhood. The time LeBron pulled him aside during All-Star Weekend, offering sincere congratulations on an MVP season. The time after a grueling finals series they embraced, not with the usual sportsmanlike tap on the back, but with the full-body exhaustion of two warriors who knew what they had just endured. Those moments were brief but profound. They said, "I see you. I respect you. I know what it took." Steph also saw how LeBron celebrated others, not just teammates but rising stars. How he encouraged young players, how he gave credit where it was due, even if the spotlight shifted away from him in doing so. That kind of humility, that kind of security in oneself, is rare. And Steph respected it more with each passing year. Even off the court, their paths occasionally crossed. Charity events, NBA summits, media appearances. And every time Steph noticed something, LeBron always carried himself like someone who knew who he was. Not just as an athlete but as a man. A father. A figure bigger than basketball. That kind of presence leaves an impression. Curry, in his own quieter way, took note. It wasn't about copying LeBron, but about honoring what he represented. When LeBron took a stand on social justice, it reminded Steph of the power of voice. When LeBron spoke about legacy and family, it echoed Steph's own values. They weren't always on the same page, but they were in the same book. Now, as Curry contemplates the reality of LeBron stepping away from the game, there's a strange mix of emotions. Pride, yes, for having competed with and against one of the greatest. Gratitude, for the memories, the lessons, the shared stage. But also a quiet sadness. Because whether they faced off or stood side by side, LeBron was there, a constant. There's comfort in that kind of presence. Even when you're battling for the same prize, knowing that someone else understands your sacrifice gives you strength. So when that day comes, when LeBron finally walks away, Steph knows he'll feel it. Not just as a competitor, but as a brother in the journey. One who fought hard, laughed harder, and made the game richer. The NBA will go on. New stars will rise. But for Curry, there will always be one name etched beside his in the story of this era, not as an enemy but as a mirror. Someone who showed him what was possible. Someone who walked the fire with him. And when they both look back, long after the jerseys are hung and the cameras have turned away, Steph hopes they'll smile. Not because they beat each other, but because they brought out the best in one another. The court will quiet one day. The noise will fade, the cameras will shift, and the jersey with the number 23 will hang still, not in motion, not in battle, but honored above the rafters. When that moment arrives, when LeBron James finally steps away for good, Stephen Curry knows one thing for certain. The game will never be the same. And that's not a loss, it's a mark of LeBron's greatness. Curry has spent much of his adult life sharing the same timeline as LeBron. From young hopeful to seasoned star, he evolved under the presence of a legend. But now, facing the end of that era, Steph feels a deeper calling, not to mourn LeBron's absence, but to continue what he began. Not his stats, not his style, but his standard. Because LeBron's true legacy isn't just in numbers, though those will echo for decades. It's in how he made everyone around him rise. From the kid watching in a tiny apartment, dreaming of something bigger, to the veteran teammate chasing one more title, LeBron inspired people to believe more was possible. And Steph was no exception. He remembers thinking years ago that being a shooter meant he had a ceiling. That his size, his quieter demeanor, his lack of flashy athleticism, would hold him back. But LeBron's career challenged that thinking. Not because they played the same, but because LeBron shattered molds. He proved that you didn't have to fit anyone's definition but your own. He proved that greatness had no one shape. And in doing so he gave Steph permission, not verbally but through example, to build his own way. To lead with joy. To win with humility. To prove doubters wrong without ever needing to say, "I told you so." That's the real power of legacy. It multiplies. It lives in others. Now, with LeBron's playing days nearing their close, Steph feels an invisible baton being passed. Not just to him but to every player who watched LeBron and saw a path. A path that wasn't easy but possible. A path that required sacrifice, resilience, and above all, authenticity. Curry doesn't pretend he can fill LeBron's shoes. No one can. But he knows he can walk forward with the same spirit, to give more than he takes, to lift as he climbs, to build bridges where walls once stood. And as he reflects, Steph thinks about LeBron's children. About Bronny now carving his own road. About the generations coming up who only know LeBron as the icon. They didn't watch him grow. They didn't see the losses, the criticism, the weight he carried. But Curry did. And that history matters. Because legacies are deeper when you've seen the full arc, from promise to fulfillment. Steph hopes to tell that story one day, not just to his own kids but to any young athlete asking what greatness looks like. And he'll say it wasn't just the points or the trophies. It was how LeBron showed up. Every game, every year, every challenge. Always present. Always evolving. Now, as the NBA moves into its next chapter, Curry feels both a responsibility and an honor. To stand at the edge of one era and help lead into another. To make sure that what LeBron built, not just in Cleveland or Miami or LA but in hearts and minds, continues to grow. And when the time comes, when LeBron finally walks off that court for the last time, Curry won't just clap politely or nod with respect. He'll stand, hands together, and offer something more personal. Thank you. Thank you for being the fire to chase. Thank you for setting the standard. Thank you for making the game, and all of us in it, better. Because when legends leave the floor, their legacy doesn't disappear. It echoes in every bounce of the ball that follows.